Hey friends, welcome back to the Offbit. Today we're starting a new series called Cheap Thrills. Well, the whole idea of this segment is, I'm going to make you wait and find out. Stick around. Do you ever find yourself browsing the internet, shopping, scouring eBay? There's certain things that pique your interest. Like a cheap thrill. So, that's what this segment's about. Today's cheap thrill is the GeForce GT 220. This particular model is the Gigabyte version. It is the overclock and has 1 gig of DDR3 RAM. In 2020, we like to bling up our cards with RGB lighting. But back in 2009, Gigabyte, they thought nothing screams bling like translucent blue plastic wrapped around your GPU. Oh yeah. Alright, jokes aside, let's get serious. So as it goes for entry-level cards, the heatsink on it is probably more than generous and more than adequate than what is needed. It's also supported by a rather large fan. Now, today's standard, the GT220 performance is somewhat probably comical, and we could laugh at the card, but when it comes down to it, this card is actually pretty well built. So let's jump in the specs. This card is the Gigabyte version of the GT220. It's the GV-N220 OC-1GI. Its core clock runs at 720 MHz. It has a 1600 MHz clock for the memory. Comes with 1 gig of DDR3 APIs. DirectX 10.1 is supported, as well as OpenGL 3.1. Now, DirectX 10.1 and OpenGL 3.1, they're not new versions, so we're going to run into issues running games. We're going to get a lot of errors. A lot of games won't run, especially anything in newer titles such as this year, 2020. Now, these cards can be found on eBay for $20. You also just find them in PCs that are junk, so you can get them between nothing, $20-30 Australian, so it's cheap. Now, we're running my standard test bench that we always do, so that's the i5-760. We've got 8 gig of RAM slapped into that motherboard. Now, we do have 2 SSDs on this test rig and 1 magnetic drive. Most of the games run off the SSD, but a few run off the magnetic. Alright, we're going to move into the benchmarking phase. Synthetic benchmarks, we're going to start off with Cinebench. In Cinebench, the GT220 came flat last with 20.41 frames per second. That's not a great start. However, we'll push on. Moving on to the next synthetic benchmark, we moved into Unigine Heaven. GT220 pushed ahead of the 6570, scoring 94 points over 84 points on the HD 6570, which is a little bit of a surprise from what Cinebench showed. So this card actually might be able to do stuff. We tried to run 3D Mark Firestrike, but it will not run on this card. So instead, we're going to run the Counter-Strike Source Video Stress Test. So in CS Source Video Stress Test, we've only tested mobile video cards. So that was the X55C upgrade I did a couple of weeks ago. So the NVIDIA GT220 scored 71.26 frames per second, leaving the GT220 in last position, showing that it is a lot slower than 2nd and 3rd gen i5 CPU's onboard graphics. So the game testing is going to be interesting. First game we're going to be testing today is Blizzard's Overwatch. Now, we ran Overwatch at 720p and at low settings. The gameplay is actually fairly playable. Not the best of experience, but not the worst. So our average frame rates were 39.9 frames per second, and our maximum frame rate was 64.2. Now, our 0.1% lows were 5.6 frames per second, which is probably not that bad for this type of card. Counter-Strike Source actually ran fairly good. Quite a smooth playable experience. We did play this game at 720p as well. You could probably bump this up to 1080p, but that would probably force the average frame rate back, and where it was sitting I thought was actually a good spot. So our average frame rate for Counter-Strike Source was 52.9 frames per second. Maximum frame rate hit 239.9 frames per second. Minimums were 32.4 and our 0.1% lows at 2.3 frames per second. Pretty much laid a nice smooth experience, but it still had to load things here and there, and it did jump. So for a cheap thrill card, it runs Counter-Strike Source pretty good.
We've lost the bomb.
Jumping into Minecraft, we got one of these errors. Now, this one's not really an error. This is just saying that your video card will no longer be supported in the next versions of Minecraft Windows 10 Edition. However, they do reassure you that you'll be able to run this particular build. So what does that mean? Well, basically, this is the last version of Minecraft you'll be able to play on this video card. Alright, so the benchmarks for Minecraft Bedrock Edition, or Windows 10 Edition. Now the game played okay, it felt fairly smooth. Now we did only get an average frame rate of 39.3 frames per second. Now we are running at 1080p with default settings, so we could probably turn some of things back. The maximum frame rate we hit was 59 frames per second, our 0.1% lows for 15 frames per second. So all in all, the game ran pretty good. It's kind of crazy to think that this video card will no longer be supported in later versions, and it actually runs it fine. So for now, this card is a cheap thrill win for Minecraft, but probably in a month's time, maybe not so much. Okay, back to a Blizzard title. We are playing HOTS, or better known as Heroes of the Storm. Now this game played really smooth. It got an average frame rate of 80.6 frames per second. Our minimums were 55.6 and our maximums were 98.4. Now we did run this game at 1080p, and I think we ran this at about low with the graphics level. Now the 0.1% lows were at 11.1, so this game pretty much ran flawlessly. Something I was expecting, but yeah, the GT220, definitely a win. It is a cheap thrill when it comes to this game. Last game we're playing today is Valorant. Now this is the biggest surprise I found out of all the games today. So, this game played smooth. It was running at an average frame rate of 61.3 frames per second. Our minimum only fell down to 36.9. Our maximum was 98.4. Now the 0.1% lows were 20 frames per second. This game just ran great. I played as good as I would on probably anything. We did run this resolution at 1080p as well, and I think the settings are set to default. I think developers have done really good getting this game to run smooth on everything. Mate, it runs on a GT220. I don't think you'll be sad if you ran a GT220 in your PC and try to run Valorant. But anyway, if you did not find that, let me know. Just put some in the comments. I'd like to hear. But for me, this game ran amazing. Now, I'd like to say we did get a few warnings going into games. Valorant did give us a warning saying that our video card may not be properly supported. We got errors trying to run Sea of Thieves. We also got errors running Fortnite and also PUBG. So we did not get to any of those games. We also ran Rocket League, but every time we ran that, we stared at the desktop instead of the game menu. So that's a big no for Rocket League. I really was hoping that the GT220 would be able to run it. So I'm going to sum this card up. Yes, I think this card classifies as a cheap thrill. The more I used this card, the more I liked it. I was surprised that it could launch most of the games, and once it launched it, it even surprised me once again that it could actually run the game smoothly and at a playable frame rate. Alright, well that's all I got for the off bit today. Now, if you like this video, please hit that like button. Now, if you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. Very important. leave some comments. I love to hear what you guys are thinking. Love to hear what you guys have gone through and some of your experiences with maybe GT220s or just even some cheat cards. Well, thank you for watching. We'll catch you next time on The Offbit.